Good evening, everybody out there. I'm meteorologist Zach Fidella with a Wednesday evening update. I keep having these little video updates to kind of let you know what's the latest on what is now reorganized Harvey. It's a tropical depression now. Harvey has got its name back, even though we were kind of calling it Harvey all along. But there's a couple of big things that have developed today. Number one, the hurricane hunters went down there. They found the center of circulation. That's why we have a track from the hurricane center. And that's why I think the models are going to do a little bit better from here on out because we actually have a center. We're not guessing at what that center is. We have a center of circulation. But I'm going to just throw the models right on here just because when you look at them, you will understand every meteorologist's frustration is going to be the same the next few days because it's like, okay, what is this? This is the spaghetti plots. This is what we show very frequently. It's basically all the models put on one, say, map. And when it does this, it's like, okay, well, throw up your hands and say, what's going to happen? Well, for sure, we know what's going to happen in the short term. When I mean short term, I mean through landfall, the first landfall. Could there be two landfalls with a storm? That's very possible. Not going to sit here and forecast something like that right now, but you clearly see the first landfall is going to occur somewhere along the south central Texas coastline, right around Corpus Christi. If that is to play out the way it should, and most models agree on that, the heavy rainfall threat is going to be in the eastern side, from southwest Louisiana to places like Houston, all the way back to where the center moves on shore. Once you get past, say, central Louisiana, locations east of that point, that beginning of the storm, Friday's landfall in Texas on into the weekend, you're probably not going to see much rain in southeastern Louisiana. That's not the big question mark for southeastern Louisiana. It's not. I don't want everybody to think, oh, when this storm moves into Texas, we're going to get a lot of rain in Louisiana. That's not totally the case. It's what happens after that, and that's the part that it's very difficult to tell you because what happens is on Friday, which is 2 days away, it makes landfall, and then it stalls. Saturday, Sunday, still kind of sitting over South Texas, and then once we go into next week, now we're talking about a 5 to 6 day forecast. You know the cone from the National Hurricane Center goes out 5 days. We have very little skill in forecasting beyond that, but what we do know is the stall is going to occur over portions of Texas. There's going to be a heavy rain band that sets up on the eastern side. Is that right over southwest Louisiana? Is that more so over southeast Texas? That's our first kind of big question mark as far as where are these bands going to set up, okay? Now, I'm going to put on the National Hurricane Center's track here, and I'm going to show you what they're thinking. And again, they're going to follow the middle of that, say, all of those models. They're going to go what they call a consensus of all the models. They put them all together, and this is what they're thinking is going to happen. Clearly, it's sort of the same story. It's going to continue to move off to the northwest and hit the coast of Texas, somewhere around Corpus Christi to Matagorda Bay, sometime probably Friday night. That's when it'll make landfall. And let me reiterate, if you're a resident of Texas and you're watching this and you live in these areas, this storm will likely become a hurricane right before it makes landfall, and it will be strengthening on approach. The environment is favorable for this thing to kind of ramp up right when it gets to the coast. So that's something that those residents need to pay attention to. They have a possibility of a wind threat and also a very heavy rain threat. Louisiana proper don't see a wind threat with this first little, say, landfall, okay? It's mainly going to just be some rain, mainly in the western portion of the state. That's for Friday's landfall into the weekend. But notice what they do. Saturday, it's inland. Sunday, it's basically the same spot. And then as we go into Monday of next week, it's turning easterly. That is the big question. What is going to happen? And like I said, you're getting 5 days away. That's a very long-term forecast. In regular terms, this storm, this center of circulation, 5 days in advance would be somewhere around the Central Caribbean, and the track would be somewhere across the Central Gulf, and we know how those can shift. The same thing happens with here. Just because it's stalled, it doesn't mean that, oh, we're going to know exactly where it's going to go. The fact of the matter is once it stalls, once it's inland on Friday and it stalls out, stalled storms are very difficult to forecast, and that's kind of what I'm preaching today is we know what it's going to do in the short term. The next 2 to 3 days, it's going to move into Texas as a hurricane, most likely. That's why we have hurricane watches up. And then what happens after that? And as meteorologists, that's what we're going to have to try and figure out over the next few days. Here's the latest visible satellite imagery. We're about to lose daylight very soon because the sun's going to be setting. And it's not organizing rapidly right now, but slowly it seems to be getting itself together. Clearly, you see we're finally starting to get these little bands that are developing, and that's when we have a developing system. We look for these bands. They're still not very organized, but you clearly see the bubbles in the atmosphere. That's all those cloud tops. That's that convection For a storm to strengthen, for the pressure to drop, it needs a lot of that convection right over the center, and the center is somewhere around right here. Watch, they see that blow up that happened right over the center of circulation? We need that to continue. Well, we don't want that to continue, but if you're talking about a strengthening storm, that needs to continue, and this storm is going to slowly strengthen, I think, in the next 24 hours, and then, like I mentioned before, once it gets closer to the Texas coastline, that's when it might ramp up a little bit faster and could become a Category 1 hurricane. And you always say, if they're forecasting a Category 1 hurricane, what the National Hurricane Center is doing, you always prepare for a Category 2. This is strictly for the Texas residents that live in that hurricane watch area. Not so much for Louisiana. We're not talking about Louisiana right now because Louisiana's threat comes what happens afterwards. What happens once it moves inland? Does it turn around and come back offshore? Could it just keep going inland and kind of scoot into central Texas and maybe just die out over there? That's a possibility. Again, we're talking 4 or 5 days away, so I can't tell you if that's certain, but I'm going to show you the European model. This is probably, I mean, we look at two, I keep saying it, GFS European. The latest GFS sort of does that. It goes inland and then it sort of stays inland and eventually it tries to come back out over the Gulf, but there's not much left of the storm. That's a possibility. That's possibility number one. The European, on the other hand, I'm going to put this into motion as we go into today on Thursday and then Friday, getting closer to the coast. Notice how the pressure is dropping down to 993 and then down to, it's basically moving inland sometime late Friday night into Saturday morning. Going into Sunday morning, it's over south central Texas, somewhere south of San Antonio. And then watch what happens from Sunday into Monday morning. It shoots back to the southeast. That's the worry for us. And then watch, I'll continue this on as we go into Tuesday morning. It's moving more northeasterly over the open waters of the Gulf of Mexico. May I add, that's very warm waters of the Gulf of Mexico. And then eventually it moves into southwest Louisiana as you get into Wednesday morning. Is that a possibility? Yes. But is that the more likely possibility? Not exactly. I can't tell you that right now because the possibility of it just scooting inland is also there. Again, we're talking 5 to 6 days. This is next Wednesday. And so now you understand kind of why we're preaching the big old thing of, okay, when this thing stalls, it's going to just keep producing rain and rain and rain. But for the first person or the first area that's going to see that rain is going to be Texas. The question mark for Louisiana is when it comes back that second time, if it does, that is when we will see the most rainfall from the storm, if it ever happens. But that's just a possibility. Whenever we talk about stalling storms, it's just very difficult to determine what's going to happen. Once they stall out, they can do some wobbling, they can do some crazy things, and that is going to be the tough part. I can admit this is going to be a headache. This is going to be a long duration event. It's going to be kind of a pain to try and figure out what's going to happen after this thing makes landfall. Like I mentioned before, it's a set in stone that the storm is going to hit Texas on Friday or Friday night and a Saturday. It's what happens after that. That's what we're going to have to try and figure out. You can see the bullseye. This is the Weather Prediction Center. This is from NOAA. They put out a rainfall outlook. 13.6 across southeastern Texas, right along the coastline from Galveston, Beaumont, even portions of, say, the far southwestern portion of southwest Louisiana, somewhere around Holly Beach, westward down the coast. Somebody's going to see at least a foot of rain, and I say at least a foot because I think that's easily going to be on the low side. In the long run, this could easily be 2 feet or maybe even more. Some of the model outputs are just ridiculous with the amount of rain because if a storm sits on you for 3 days, you can imagine how much rain is going to fall in those 3 days. What I want to draw your attention to for some map like this, you can't say everybody in this area. You see this whole area is circled, and I have the absolute wrong color on here because you can't even tell what color that is. But let me try yellow. Yellow might work a little bit better. Let me get rid of that. You see this whole circled area. Obviously, it's not going to rain 10 or a foot of rain in that entire area. That is not going to happen. When we talk about landfalling storms, they have rain bands. Where are those rain bands set up? Easily a foot, 2 feet, but 50 miles or so to the east or west, you can easily get a 1 or 2 inches. So you can't, I mean, the possibility for everybody is there. Is everybody going to see the same amount of rainfall? No. Are some locations going to see more than this is estimating? Yes. Are some locations going to see considerably less? Yes. If this storm goes more farther, say, into Texas and doesn't make that second loop, Louisiana may escape with not much going on. But if it doesn't do that, if it does move back offshore and sort of kind of lollygag itself into Louisiana into next week, We're on the east side of the storm for how many days? 4 or 5 days. We're going to have rain bands that are moving in mainly across the western portion of the state. But if that circulation eventually starts coming east more so, then that'll move over the south central and southeastern part of the state as we go throughout the week next week. And like I said, just get ready. It's going to be a headache. This is going to be something that you're just going to have to monitor. This is not something that I'm going to be able to answer questions as far as where this is going to go tomorrow, because we're still 5 days away from, say, a potential second landfall. Not saying it's going to happen, but you understand that it's a long duration time. We're at the 2 days. We know it's going to go into Texas. It's going to stall. And then does it come back out? Does it just fizzle out over Texas? All of those answers, I think, unfortunately, are still days away. What you have to note is if you have any travel plans west towards Texas, you probably need to cancel them, unfortunately, because some of the models are painting a very significant flood to the point that, I mean, Allison. Remember Allison? Anybody who's looking at Houston, even New Orleans too, remembers the Allison flood. That's what type of rain we could be talking about. And drainage has probably changed a lot in Houston since that event. You never try and compare two storms because they're all different. They all have different characteristics. But I think in the end, Harvey's going to be known for the rain. Some wind, especially where that first landfall occurs, but it's going to be known for the rain. It's just trying to figure out where that rain is going to fall the heaviest and what happens once it stalls and starts moving again. Does it come back over the Gulf and re-strengthen? Again, this is your update for your Wednesday evening. I'll provide more updates as we go throughout the next few days. And as I get more information, as these model runs keep going and they're going to flip back and forth, I'll keep updating you here on Facebook and on Stormcast Live. I'm meteorologist Zach Fradella. Have a great rest of your Wednesday.